The decision to go to war should be accompanied by three visions: the vision of your own death in that war, the vision of experiencing the war from the other side, and the opportunity cost. What could have been, but was not, because of the war. For the so-called global war on terrorism, these visions might look something like this. First, your own death might feel hot, violent, and cruelly banal. Hear the moon dirt squeak and crunch beneath your suede and rubber composite boots. Sense the sweat dripping from your lower back into the crack of your ass. Feel the weight of the helmet and body armor compressing your spine. You pause to rest. Just a moment's relief in the shade of a mud hut. In August, Kandahar hits 112 degrees Fahrenheit. Your hand, wrapped in a hard-knuckled, fire-retardant glove, rests upon one of your rectangular ammo pouches containing 3 30-round magazines of 5.56mm bullets. Your trigger finger lies ready outside the trigger well of your M4 assault rifle. You are always plagued by gnawing, low-grade anxiety, but today, it's worse than usual. You cross a stream, up and over a makeshift bridge, and turning the corner, your life ceases to exist. No glory, no romantic oil painting commemorating this awful little incident. Now rewind to the exact moment when you stepped on the IED. The moment it killed you. Your legs immediately ripped off in thick, unrecognizable hunks. The overpressure from the shockwave is like an invisible avalanche, hitting your body all at once. You never had a chance. The raw meat of your guts and arms flung into the overhanging orchard trees above. One of your buddies will have the grisly job of getting the pieces of you out of that tree. Now see the cold steel casket, flag held taut by rubber bands. The honor guard unloads your remains from the belly of a C-5 or C-130 aircraft at Dover Air Force Base to the soundtrack of your family wailing uncontrollably. Now there's a sharp salute, tears, and a bugle playing taps. Your headstone in Section 60 of Arlington National Cemetery is there, next to the other freshly dug graves that do not yet contain their occupants. And in time, with more wars, these headstones become just like all the other headstones. Second, envision that another country has violently occupied America in a preventive war to free you of America's current administration. The invasion is under the auspices of fighting terrorism and, not without lugubrious irony, seemingly lost on the invaders, they are systematically committing acts of terrorism under their own doctrinal definition of the word. Your home is searched by anxious, heavily armed young men aching to kill a terrorist American. They are covered in angular armor pads, eyes obscured by black Oakley sunglasses. Your home is no longer a home. It's been dehumanized, called a compound, cache, or built-up area. Your nation has been relieved of its sovereignty. You are no longer a person, but reduced to a slur, akin to enemy, insurgent, terrorist, sand nigger, haji, towelhead, goat fucker, cocksucker, or the all-inclusive, multi-purpose, good-for-every-occasion motherfucker. Your liberators look at you hungrily, hoping to find the wafer-thin burden of proof needed to shoot you in the motherfucking face, to get that CIB, Combat Infantryman Badge, to pop their combat cherry. After all, getting into direct combat earns them a coveted badge that helps with promotion. No one wants to face the shame of having not seen action. They use their rules of engagement to enforce a made-up curfew. They kill military-age males tending to their farmland, claiming suspicious activity. If there is an apology, it's hollow and melodramatic. Any loss is too much. But needless civilian death is not compelling enough to change their tactics. They stop traffic using heavily armored Starship vehicles, force cars off the road, and throw water bottles filled with urine at children. They disrespect your religion. They kill anyone in your community who actively fights back in self-defense. Those who are accused of leading resistance forces are taken to black sites to be tortured. They tap your phones without warrant. Helicopters named after past victims of government-sanctioned genocides, Kiowa, Apache, Black Hawk, regularly hover above your community. Drones with names such as Predator or Reaper buzz your home to keep you safe, they say. You're afraid. Perhaps the greatest insult is their audacity to tell you they're only here to help, to free the oppressed. You've never felt more oppressed in your life. Third, envision the world as if the war had never happened. The American soldiers who had been killed are alive, learning, loving, and making dreams. The trillions in war debt spent on eye-watering military contracts and medical bills for facial reconstructions, hip disarticulations, AK, above-knee amputation, an injury so common it gets its own shorthand jargon, never happened. The 1 in 4 post-9/11 veterans in the labor force who have a service-connected disability are perfectly healthy. On top of that, what if companies within the military-industrial complex didn't sell fear in the form of stupid high-tech equipment to their former subordinates in Department of Defense (DoD) procurement? Honestly, it's hard to recall a time in American history when more was spent to accomplish less. Instead, imagine that politicians use the over $6.4 trillion of capital, the projected cost of the war on terror, on long-term investments that had a higher return on investment along with better social outcomes. Could we live without white elephant weapon systems like the F-35 fighter, saving us over $1.5 trillion? With the money spent on this jet, America could have paid the bill on all student debt in the United States, or hired Beyoncé for a private concert every day for the next 1,000 years. And once such an expensive project is complete, are we to believe that this new Ferrari weaponry will sit on an airfield to rust? Of course not. This is an anchor purchase guaranteeing our national addiction to war for decades to come. But what if this had been invested elsewhere? Perhaps renewable energy to stop the creeping genocide currently sponsored through willful ignorance and dithering political inaction. By failing to invest now, America is in effect investing in future wars. Climate conflicts fought over water scarcity, crop failure, and internal displacement. And if a clear and present danger like climate change feels too abstract, we could at least repair crumbling American infrastructure. Or invest in education, where, at 14% proficiency in math, Mississippi is on par with Bulgaria, Trinidad and Tobago, and Uruguay. At 8% math proficiency, D.C. is on par with Kazakhstan, Mexico, and Thailand. Imagine that America's reputation to the rest of the world, as measured by Gallup polls, didn't show America as the greatest threat to peace in the world. And last, which I think is fitting since they often receive no mention at all, the hundreds of thousands of non-combatants, the unpeople in that dusty faraway land are still alive, at home with their families too. The U.S. government sent me to Afghanistan at the age of 23. I protected myself and 3/4 of the men in my platoon. I endangered and hurt many. I lived in mud shacks and trolled dirt roads for IEDs, either with my tires or, worse, my boots. We did dangerous, humdrum, unilateral patrols without conducting any meaningful training with Afghan security forces. I accomplished nothing that one would consider worth fighting for. I wasted a lot of taxpayer money. The Afghans I met either didn't want us there or wanted us to stay long enough to relieve us of our money, taxpayer dollars that the military was aching to spend on exorbitant military contracts, knowingly lining the pockets of warlords guilty of human rights abuses. On the ground, the war felt morally dubious, illegal in its scope, and unjust in terms of proportionality. Many of my friends died, or became permanently handicapped. I personally buried one of my West Point classmates in Arlington National Cemetery, handing the folded American flag to his crying mother. Another one of my soldiers killed himself after returning home. One of my soldiers is serving life in prison after murdering and dismembering the body of someone whom he never knew in a bathtub in Oregon. With an accomplice, they rammed a crossbow bolt through the victim's ear while he was alive, trying to puncture his brain, and when this failed, they choked him to death with a chain. After chopping up his body in a bathtub, they used his car to rob a bank. Divorce, alcohol, drugs, depression, zombie medication, there's too much to capture here. I was very lucky. I compromised my morals and had the formative years of my life amputated by serving an unnecessary war.